James VI of Scotland was 20 years old when he received the news that changed his life forever. He sat calmly while officials read the letter describing his mother's death. His mother had been executed. Mary, Queen of Scots, once the most famous Catholic queen in Europe, had been beheaded in England in 1587. She died on the order of Queen Elizabeth of England after nearly 20 years as her prisoner. The room waited for the king's reaction. People across Europe expected outrage from her son. They expected a young king marching south to avenge his murdered mother. A son hearing news like that might collapse with grief or explode with anger. Most sons would react with fury after hearing that their mother had been executed by a foreign queen. Instead, James did something that shocked many observers. He protested. He sent envoys, including the Master of Grey, to negotiate with English authorities. He wrote diplomatic letters expressing anger. Then he did nothing. No army marched toward England. No declaration of war followed. To many people watching at the time, it looked like betrayal. How could a son allow the execution of his own mother? James spoke carefully to diplomats, explaining that the matter was policy, not emotion. It sounded cold and almost unbelievable. But James was not simply a grieving child. He was already a king navigating one of the most dangerous political landscapes in Europe, and the truth behind his decision leads deep into his ancestry. Because Mary, Queen of Scots, was not just his mother, she was also his greatest obstacle to becoming King of England. The famous queen and her only son had spent their entire lives apart. James had not seen his mother since he was a baby, not once in childhood, not as a young man, and not when he became king. The separation began almost before James could even remember her face. James entered the world surrounded by royal drama. He was born in June 1566 at Edinburgh Castle. His mother ruled Scotland, and his father was Henry Stuart, known as Lord Darnley. The match looked promising at first because Darnley also carried royal blood, which strengthened Mary's claim to power. The marriage had already become dangerous. Darnley's behavior caused scandal and anger among the Scottish nobles. The Scottish court was full of rival factions, and religion divided the country between Catholics and Protestants. James entered a world where politics was never far from violence. Within a year, everything collapsed. In 1567, Darnley died after an explosion destroyed the house where he stayed. Suspicion spread everywhere, and many people believed Mary's powerful ally, James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell, played a role in the murder. Soon after Darnley's death, Mary married Bothwell. The decision stunned Scotland. To many nobles, a queen marrying a man widely suspected of involvement in her husband's death created a political disaster. Nobles began organizing resistance. In May 1567, Mary visited her infant son at Stirling Castle when the baby was just about 1 year old. It was the last time she would ever see him. Only weeks later, the rebellion reached its breaking point. Mary's forces met the rebels near a place called Carberry Hill. The confrontation ended with the Queen surrendering. Her captors brought her to Lochleven Castle. Inside those walls, the Queen faced enormous pressure from nobles who wanted stability. They believed Mary's rule had become too dangerous for the kingdom. Their solution focused on her son, James. The infant boy offered a new beginning. Raised under Protestant guidance, he could rule without the controversies surrounding his mother. Mary, Queen of Scots, sat at a table inside Lochleven Castle in 1567. Guards watched every movement. The Queen of Scotland held a document in front of her. Under duress, she signed the documents transferring the crown to James. With that signature, she surrendered her crown not to an enemy king or a conquering army, but to her own infant son. He was barely a year old. Within days, the baby was crowned James VI of Scotland in a Protestant ceremony while his mother remained a prisoner. Mary later escaped from prison and fled south into England. She hoped her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, would help restore her power. Two queens, connected by blood, two women ruling in a world dominated by men. Mary expected protection and perhaps support to win back her throne. Instead, the moment she crossed that border, her freedom slowly vanished. Elizabeth did not welcome her as a guest. She placed Mary in what officials called protective custody. Elizabeth kept her under watch for years, fearing that Mary's supporters might attempt to place her on the English throne. Mary would remain a prisoner in England for the next 19 years. The strange twist behind those lost years lies in her own family tree. Mary carried Tudor blood in her veins. That blood made her both a queen and a threat. The story begins with a woman who never ruled England at all. Margaret Tudor. Margaret was the sister of Henry VIII and the daughter of Henry VII, the first Tudor king who ended the Wars of the Roses. The Tudor dynasty depended heavily on family marriages to secure alliances across Europe. Margaret Tudor married James the Vavassor of Scotland. The union joined the Tudor family of England with the royal house of Scotland. Margaret Tudor's children carried Tudor blood, and one of those descendants was Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary was the great-granddaughter of Henry VII. That lineage gave her a possible claim to the English throne. Elizabeth was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Henry's marriage to Anne had broken England away from the Catholic Church. Many Catholics questioned the legitimacy of Elizabeth II's, believing that marriage had never been valid. Under strict primogeniture, a system where the oldest line inherits first, Mary's claim looked powerful. Mary herself believed it and used it openly. During parts of her life in France, proclamations even described her as rightful Queen of England. Those statements terrified Elizabeth's government. Mary's Catholic identity made her appealing to people who opposed Elizabeth's Protestant rule. Her existence gave rebels a figure they could rally around. Plots formed around her name as supporters hoped she might one day sit on the English throne. Spain and France watched closely because both Catholic powers could benefit from a Catholic ruler in England. The Northern Rebellion became one example, where Catholic supporters hoped to replace Elizabeth with Mary and restore Catholic rule in England. While Mary lived in captivity, James grew up in Scotland without her. The boy king grew up under a series of regents. These were powerful nobles who ruled the country while he was too young to govern. Scotland's economy struggled under the strain of conflict. Faction fights broke out among the nobles, and rival groups competed for influence. The first regent was the Earl of Moray, Mary's half-brother, but also one of her strongest political opponents. Many of the regents viewed Mary as a threat. If she returned to Scotland, she might try to reclaim the throne or control her son's government, so the regents kept the young king carefully separated from her influence. Moray and the other regents controlled access to James. They decided who he met, what he learned, and how he viewed the world. In practical terms, they raised him to see his mother not as a loving parent, but as a dangerous political figure. James knew his mother more as a political figure than as a parent. He grew up surrounded by tutors and advisors rather than family. His education focused heavily on religion, politics, and scholarship. He became known as an intelligent and thoughtful ruler even at a young age. But the emotional bond between mother and son never had a chance to grow. Years passed without any meeting. Mary moved from castle to castle across England under watchful guards. English officials moved her between more than 10 different locations across the country. Custodians responsible for her included powerful nobles such as the Earl of Shrewsbury. She wrote letters. She pleaded for help. She waited for rescue. Elizabeth made her position clear. Mary could not leave unless she renounced her claim to the English succession. Mary refused. Her ancestry gave her that claim. and renouncing it would erase part of her royal identity. She tried repeatedly to change her political situation. One idea she proposed was called association, a plan that suggested shared rule where Mary and James would reign together. Mary offered compromises to make the proposal more acceptable, including amnesty for enemies, religious flexibility, and a calmer political arrangement. James showed little interest. The young king had grown up under Protestant regents who guided his thinking carefully. James saw the situation differently. He understood the political reality of the time. Elizabeth controlled England and held enormous influence over events in Scotland. Scotland's government struggled financially during James's early reign. The court required funds for diplomacy, troops, and daily expenses. Elizabeth had something James desperately needed: money. In 1586, the two rulers negotiated the Treaty of Berwick, creating a formal alliance between Scotland and England. Elizabeth began sending James an annual subsidy. The payments ranged between £4,000 and £5,000 each year. The money supported the court and helped stabilize James's rule. James carefully framed the agreement as a league of amity, meaning a partnership between allies. But Elizabeth controlled the purse and used that power. The payments often arrived late or stopped temporarily. When Elizabeth wanted James to enforce certain policies, the money could slow down. If she wanted cooperation on border security or religious matters, the payments reminded him where the power lay. James understood the game. He complained politely when funds arrived late. James once wrote a polite but pointed message to Queen Elizabeth I. He reminded her of a Latin proverb, "Bistat quid cito dat," he gives twice who gives soon. James depended on that money more than he liked to admit, yet James kept writing, kept negotiating, and kept taking Elizabeth's pension. To many people, this looked shocking. A son accepting money from the ruler who held his mother captive. But James understood something others did not. That pension was not just cash. It was a quiet promise about the future crown of England. Elizabeth had no direct heir. That fact left England's future throne uncertain. If James could maintain peaceful relations with England, he stood as the strongest candidate to inherit the English throne when she died. If Mary returned to freedom and continued claiming the English crown, she could disrupt that plan. Every conspiracy surrounding Mary threatened to destroy that possibility. Mary's existence created a constant threat. One plot followed another. The Ridolfi plot, the Throckmorton plot, finally the Babington plot. The Babington plot involved plans to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the English throne. Each plot placed her son in a dangerous position. If Mary succeeded through foreign intervention, England might face invasion or civil war. If she failed again, Elizabeth's anger could threaten the entire Stuart family. In 1586, English authorities uncovered the Babington plot. English agents intercepted letters connected to the plot. Those letters became the evidence used against Mary during her trial for treason. The verdict was clear: execution. Mary Stuart, once Queen of Scotland and claimant to England, faced death after 19 years of captivity. Elizabeth hesitated before signing the death warrant because executing another anointed monarch carried enormous consequences. But the pressure from advisors became overwhelming. When Elizabeth finally approved the execution in 1587, the political landscape shifted instantly. Mary was gone. The Catholic rival to Elizabeth had disappeared, and that change opened a door for her son. James understood the situation immediately. If he reacted with violence, he could destroy his own chances of inheriting England. The Scottish kingdom lacked the power to challenge its southern neighbor directly. England possessed stronger armies, greater wealth, and greater political stability. He lacked the military strength to defeat England. He lacked the financial resources to sustain a major war. More importantly, he had something to gain by remaining calm. James viewed the situation through the lens of realpolitik, practical politics rather than emotional reaction. His mother's death could not be undone. His own future still depended on England, so he preserved the alliance. The pension continued. He balanced grief with strategy. Emotion might demand revenge. Policy demanded patience. Many historians believe James quietly recognized that reality. As long as she lived, Catholic supporters might attempt to place her on the throne instead of James. Mary's execution removed a complicated rival from the political stage. Without Mary alive to attract rebellion, the path towards succession became clearer. Secret correspondence between the two rulers deepened their relationship. Elizabeth's advisors began secret communication with James in Scotland. Elizabeth sometimes referred to him as the heir connected through family ties. Other possible heirs existed, like Arabella Stuart. But Elizabeth's government gradually pushed those alternatives aside. James presented a stable Protestant ruler acceptable to England's political leadership. He did not openly support Catholic restoration in England. That religious alignment made him less threatening to England's Protestant establishment. English leaders feared Catholic claimants who might reverse the religious changes of the Tudor period. James appeared safer, and patience paid off. In 1603, Elizabeth of North died without naming a direct heir publicly. The moment arrived that James had quietly waited for. He traveled south from Scotland. Within weeks, he entered London not as a conqueror, but as the new king. No rival army challenged his claim. No civil war erupted across England. The English crown passed peacefully to James. James VI of Scotland became James I of England. For the first time, both kingdoms shared the same monarch. He immediately styled himself with a new title, King of Great Britain. The crowns his mother had fought to secure through blood and alliances came to him through patience. A son's restraint achieved what a rebellion could never have accomplished. The boy who never saw his mother again now ruled the kingdom that had executed her. He inherited the English throne partly because his mother could not. The same ancestry that once made Mary dangerous became the key that opened England's throne to her son. James later took one symbolic step that revealed how he viewed the past. In 1606, he ordered a magnificent monument for the queen who had executed his mother. The tomb honored Elizabeth as a great ruler and protector of England. Only after several more years passed did he address his mother's memory. By then, his position as king was secure. The political climate had calmed, and the immediate anger surrounding Mary's execution had faded. James VI of Scotland walks slowly through Westminster Abbey. It is the year 1612. Workers prepare a new tomb carved from white marble. Sculptors Cornelius and William Cure built Mary's monument from white marble. The structure cost about $825. James ordered his mother's remains moved to Westminster Abbey in London. Mary had first been buried in Peterborough Cathedral after her execution. For 25 years, she had rested there without a grand royal memorial. The remains traveled to Westminster Abbey and were placed in the south aisle of the Henry VII Chapel. The stone figure lying on top represents a woman in royal robes with her hands folded in prayer. The Latin text praised Mary as the mother of King James. Across the chapel stood the tomb of Elizabeth Thrush. The two rival queens faced each other across the same sacred space. The woman once executed as a traitor now rested in the same royal space as the rulers she had once threatened. 25 years earlier, the same monument could have triggered outrage. Honoring Mary too soon might have looked like criticism of Elizabeth's rule. James refused to provoke that fight. He allowed events to unfold in a way that preserved his future. He did not march south with an army. He waited. A son who loved his mother waited 25 years before honoring her publicly. Because in the world of kings and queens, even grief sometimes had to wait for the right political moment.